How do you justify a sequel? Obviously, there are multiple factors to consider here. Does the plot require or benefit from an expansion? Is it financially viable? Did the previous game sell well? It should be pretty simple, right? Your game made money, you make it again, add some new shit, make more money. Sometimes you can even get away with being really fucking lazy. Some games get sequels that they didn't deserve. Some games get sequels that they didn't need. Some games get sequels that they were never supposed to get. That was the case for the original Mega Man. Not every franchise is a hit right away. In most instances, games only get one chance though. You failed, you're not getting a second one. But when the original Mega Man game failed to meet sales expectations when it released in 1987, by a miracle it still got a sequel. It's a very interesting story, but I'm not really going into it. My point is, when Mega Man 2 came out, the series exploded in popularity. The developers at Capcom put their faith into that little game that had failed to make an impact, and their faith was rewarded. Almost 2 decades later, the Mega Man franchise was well past its peak popularity. Games were still coming out, but as the industry evolved and changed focus, the 2D platformer that rode the industry from the mid-80s to the mid-90s was now often seen as outdated and uninteresting, relegated to handheld systems that, with their weaker hardware and smaller screens, kept lower-budget games viable. While it would be fair to say that 2D sprite-based platformers in the tradition of the classics from the NES and SNES were past their prime, I think it would be wrong to call them decadent. If anything, I think in terms of polish and complexity, the genre peaked on a Nintendo DS. Mega Man ZX came out in 2006 for Nintendo's latest handheld at the time, and like the original Mega Man, it was at best a moderate success. ZX represented a new phase for the franchise, with a different tone from the Zero series on the GBA. It is my favorite Mega Man game, I legitimately love it. Check out my review of it later if you want to. It eventually also got a sequel, Mega Man ZX Advent, and what's interesting about it is, it also feels like a whole new phase. The Zero games were all direct sequels to one another, and while ZX8 does follow up on ZX's story, it does so in a way that feels almost independent from it. The game really does stand on its own. Hey, did you know you can write stuff in the comments section below? If you type 8 = D, it sort of looks like a PP. I'm pretty sure YouTube filters that, but it's worth a try. You can use it to write something intelligent too in case that fails. Also, you can like the video and subscribe. Remember to do that, it's important. As with its predecessor, in ZX8 we can choose to play as one of 2 main characters, a boy or a girl, Gray or Ash. Unlike ZX, however, here their differences go a bit beyond their genitalia. In the first game, Vent and Ale were essentially the same character. Their designs were extremely similar to one another, and their personalities were only slightly different. They occupied the same role in universe, and to argue whether one or the other or both are canon is almost a fool's errand. Gray and Ash, in contrast to that, are very much 2 distinct characters. Their designs follow the same basic color scheme, but that's basically it. Reminds me more of Pokemon protagonists. Their personalities are also a lot more distinct. They're both still shonen anime protagonists who'll never lose an opportunity to moralize about protecting the innocent or whatever. But Ash specifically is a lot more assertive than Gray, who's a bit of a little bitch. Their backstories are also completely different, with one of the more notable differences being that Gray is a Reploid, essentially a sentient android, and Ash is a human, same as Vent and Ale. I don't really like Gray's design, never did honestly. I think he looks kind of like shit. He looks simultaneously like a 10-year-old boy and as a balding old man. His forehead is just way too large and he looks like he's rocking a comb over. His shoes also look fucking ridiculous. He looks like Rex from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 wearing Yeezys. Another example of terrible character design in my opinion, by the way. I don't get the giant shoe thing, I think it looks retarded, but I guess that's been a thing in Mega Man for a long time. Ash looks better. I don't think she's as cute as Ale, but she's fine. I'm not really a fan of the color scheme for either of them. Well, they're pretty much the same. Red, orange, black, green, and gray. It's all over the place. I really think they would have benefited from sticking to fewer colors. You know what? Here. 5 minutes with the paint bucket tool. I made his hair actually white instead of silver so it looks less like natural graying hair. Made his eyes red and substituted the orange in the design with the red and white that were already present. I don't like art fixing or whatever, but I honestly think it looks better like this. Well, we wasted enough time. Moving on. While in ZX, gameplay differences between the playable characters were basically that Ao could crawl and climb ladders a little faster, and Vent was less affected by knockback and could swim faster. And none of those things really mattered. In ZXA, protagonists get different movesets for various transformations, slightly different boss fights, and entirely different intro stages. Speaking of which, let's get into those. Gray starts his story trapped in a pod. Two bounty hunters accidentally trigger a security system that alerts robots in the area. They fight and damage the pod, releasing Gray. As he wakes up, he's confronted by my wife, Pandora, from the previous game. She's a sort of robo-witch who speaks in riddles and coup de cliches. She says she'll kill Gray because he was supposed to stay in the pod for a bit longer, so they could finish brainwashing him into accepting eating the bugs and complaining about YouTubers saying retarded. Basically, he wasn't actually supposed to have free will and now he has to die. He reaches for one of the dead soldier's guns and shoots at her, and escapes as she blocks the attack, which leads to his intro stage. As for Ash, she is a bounty hunter on a mission to recover some mysterious stone thing with magical powers from illegal hunters. She jumps off her flying ship and fucking dies. So overall, Mega Man ZX Advent was a bit short, but it's still a pretty good game. Okay, she lands on another ship, and this is where her mission will take place. I'm sure glad this game doesn't have fall damage. In Mega Man ZX, we got to control a Mega Man, Model X, right away. Here both Ash and Gray start with only their base form. They do get a little garbage pea shooter gun, which is more than Ben or Ao got in the previous game, but they lack most of the moveset of the main forms we'll unlock later. Ash's stage is ever so slightly more difficult, I'd say, since it takes place on top of a series of airships, and so falling means death. It would be pretty embarrassing to get a game over in the tutorial level. Either way, the stage will teach us to crawl, jump, and shoot in a pretty unintrusive manner, which I appreciate, and will eventually lead to a boss fight against a huge mechanical dogu. It's a very simple fight naturally, as we have to defeat it in our base form. It comes down to waiting for one of its hands to come down so we can jump on it and reach its eyes, which are its only weak spots. It'll try to crush us with its opposite fist after a while, and other than that, its only attack is to shoot laser beams out of its eyes that'll cover the entire screen besides the space immediately below its face. It'll follow that by shooting a few bombs out of its mouth, and we'll have to dodge that by moving to the sides of the screen again. Even then, getting hit is not really much of an issue as damage is very low. When it goes down, Gray falls as the bridge where the fight took place is destroyed and blacks out, but Ash gets another cutscene. Gray got to meet Pandora, so Ash meets the second of the edgelord siblings from ZX. This is Prometheus, the coolest man to ever live. He calls people bugs and says things are pathetic a lot, and he has a fucking laser sight. Ash also blacks out as he attacks her. Both our heroes wake up in a hunter camp, and we get a tutorial on how to save and activate fast travel points, and are given our first real mission. It takes place in this moving train a few screens right from the hunter camp. We're supposed to be guarding some important package and oh, would you look at that, Prometheus and Pandora are here to steal it. Oh no. Prometheus spouts a lot of edgy shit and destroys the container behind us. Luckily inside of it is a biometal, a powerful artifact that allows people to morph into cool robot guys and shoot stuff. Our heroes are compatible with it and so now they can defend themselves, but since the edgelord duel is clearly not early game boss material, Promi goes, interesting. I'll let you live for now, kid. This is Model A, our main form for this game. Compared to Model ZX from the last game, which had a mixed moveset with a sword for close quarters combat and a blaster for range, Model A is built entirely for range combat. It is also overall a lot less complex. It has two main moves, the classic lemon shooter that can be charged for a stronger blast, and the ability to lock onto multiple enemies in a cone area, and then discharge at all of them at once. Model A is slightly different for each character. Ash's charge shot will bounce off walls, which can be used in somewhat interesting ways, but is also slightly weaker. Now that we can transform, we also get our basic movement abilities, namely wall climbing and dashing, two staples in all games derived from Mega Man X. They feel as good here as they did in ZX and the Zero games. Spamming dash feels amazing. I really missed it for all of the 2 minutes that it took me to go through the intro stage and walk to the train. The level itself is extremely short, and honestly feels more like an extension of the tutorial than a proper level. We get a single area to get used to Model A's moveset before we're thrown into another boss fight.
Me not Maverick. Me Pseudoroid. Me Buckfire. You get away from Prometheus and Pandora, but not from I. Buckfire, obey rule. Buckfire will pummel you into ground.
This is Buckfire, and I feel like someone would get offended at him if this game came out today. Oh yeah, so this game is fully voiced. ZX was as well, but only for the Japanese release. They didn't bother with an English localization for that, and honestly, I wish they didn't for this one either. I'm sorry, I can't stand dubs in general, and this one is especially terrible.
Well, how's that lock coming? This is one tough nut to crack, but I'm almost there. Yes! Got it! We're in!
Following the tradition of Mega Man games in the West, I suppose.
You must recover all the energy immediately, Mega Man.
Model A is especially aggravating. God, I can't stand its English voice.
Okay, I'll go. Anything is better than what those guys were going to do to me. I'll help you, if you promise not to leave me. Deal?
In Japanese it just sounds like a generic little boy character, which is admittedly still a little annoying, but holy shit is it an improvement. We'll be using a mod that translates the Japanese version of the game included in the Mega Man 0/ZX Legacy Collection, so we can keep the Japanese voices. It also delocalizes a bunch of names and terms that were present in Western versions of Mega Man games since the NES, which I personally don't care much for, but it's a price I'm absolutely willing to pay. I played enough of this dubbed as a kid. I don't need to hear about how that lock is coming anymore. Buckfire is easy, as expected from the first real boss of a game, but he can still take new players by surprise. His most basic attack is shooting out 3 flaming projectiles that will travel in a fan shape. The top one will likely never hit anyone, but the lower one will be stuck on the ground for a little bit, still in flames, and the middle one will come in our direction at the specific height that allows us to dash under it. Going too far or standing too close to Buckfire as he shoots might result in us running into the flaming stick on the ground, so good positioning is an important aspect of this fight. Once he's defeated, a glowing ball of energy will come out and Model A will reveal its most important ability. You see, in Mega Man ZX we got biometals from defeated bosses. These allowed us to transform into different Mega Man forms. Here Model A allows us to transform into the forms of the bosses themselves. Now we can effectively play as Buckfire. Not some Mega Man form with Buckfire's color scheme, but as the actual boss we just defeated. Obviously, the moveset is not exactly the same, but in principle, most of his abilities are here. The high jump, the dive, the triple shot, the boomerangs. This is ZX Advent's main gimmick. After a brief tutorial that teaches us how to use our new form, we're sent back to Hunter Camp. As we submit our mission report, we're contacted by the Trinity, a group of 3 old guys who are basically the top level of the world government here. They are Masters Thomas, Mikhail, and Albert, and they want us to bring the biometal to them. They also dangle information about Gray and Ash's backstory in front of him as an incentive. The problem is the train is ruined, so we'll have to go look for scrap metal in order to fix it. Is there really not a single other alternative as far as transportation goes in this world? Fuck, we need to get to a crashed ship in order to get those materials. And in order to do that, we have to go through 2 more areas and get the forms of 2 more bosses. The Trinity gives us a card key so we can access those. We'll start with the Tower of Verdure. The entrance is just up a ramp right over the entrance to the train station. We can now access it thanks to the wall jumping ability that comes with Model A. Mega Man ZX was heavily criticized for its less than adequate attempt at being a Metroidvania. The world was confusing and the in-game map was basically useless. ZXA streamlines both of these aspects of the game. You can still go anywhere pretty much, but everything is laid out in a much more linear fashion. Rarely do areas branch out from one another, and we can activate fast travel points in the vast majority of them by simply paying up 100 energy crystals, which are the game's main currency. And that becomes a non-issue very quickly. ZXA also basically deals away entirely with the terrible mission system of the previous game. In ZX we could only fight bosses and complete objectives in an area if we had a specific mission active. We could only have 1 mission active at a time, and so if we had the mission for area H active for instance, and we stumbled upon area G, we just had to turn around. Here all missions are active at the same time, so we can just go wherever we feel like. Anyway, the Tower of Verdure itself is a pretty simple and easy level. It's very vertical as the name would lead you to imagine. Enemies are not very tough or aggressive, and the level is very generous with health refills. I think it's pretty clear that this is the level that the designers expect expected us to do first. The mini-boss, however, is pretty annoying. The spider robot will spin its legs around, forcing us to dodge them by jumping on a rhythm, and it can also summon smaller spiders and break the floor under us. It'll lift one of its legs and break the block corresponding to its collar. I find that the best way to deal with it is by trying to lock onto as many of its legs as possible with Model A's special ability. If the floor breaks completely, we'll fall down to a lower level and the fight will continue. Depending on how fast we dispose of it, we'll find ourselves at a different level when we get to the outside of the tower in the next screen. Here we can climb these tubes, but they'll start falling apart as we do. If we can make it to the top, we'll be rewarded with our first life up, which ups our life. Back inside are a few more crumbling walls we can climb in, just past them, the boss room. Rose Park is a gay flower. Yes, I'm happy to announce Mega Man ZXA was a pioneer in LGBTQ whatever representation in video games. It's a very progressive game. We walk in on him trying to make a move on some poor raider guy who's shitting his pants. He'll then either hit on Gray, who's like 4 hours old, or tell Ash how much he hates creepy girls. Dude, look at this design, what the fuck is this? As for the fight, here's a joke. He's confined to these 4 tubes, he's low as fuck and all his attacks are very easy to dodge. He also shoots a laser beam from his stigma. As with Bugfire, after we beat him, we get the ability to transform into him. He sucks. If there are no vines or tubes for him to hold on to, we're stuck with his extremely slow bud form that can do basically nothing besides shooting straight up. We can grab onto these tubes and vines with the flower form, but that's extremely situational and can only be used a few times in the game. Before we can leave the tower, we meet 2 new Mega Men. The green guy is Aeolus. The purple guy is Psyarnic. They're here to take away this huge hunk of metal stuck on the wall that they call Model W. Hey, that's the thing from the previous game. Anyway, Aeolus causes a disappointment and they go away. I wonder if we'll see those guys again. By entering this frozen door not far from the entrance to the Tower of Verdure, we get to the Arctic Ice Floe. Try to guess what the theme is. This is, in my opinion, both a much more difficult and much more interesting level than the previous one. Level design in ZXA is a lot more complex than in ZX. I find this to be one of its strongest points. The level is quite multi-layered, with floating ice blocks above and the ocean floor below. We can often choose which of these paths to take, and they offer different challenges and hide different items. The main reason why I chose to go to the tower first is that we need Rose Spark in order to reach a sub-tank here. Sub-tanks are basically an energy reserve that we can access at any time. They're very useful. This level feels like it was designed around Bugfire. His flaming sticks can destroy ice blocks, his charged jump can reach otherwise inaccessible areas, he moves a lot faster than Model A underwater, and his fire attacks are effective against the ice-based enemies that we find here. He also makes short work of the level's mini-boss. He doesn't even get a chance to do anything. At this point, energy crystals for activating transport nodes we can teleport to might be a little scarce, but we can find this NPC in an area a bit off the beaten path and do a really short side quest where we grab this moth that's flying around, and she'll reward us with 100 of them, just enough to activate one more node. I think this is really cool, and I wish this idea was expanded upon, but we'll soon have more crystals than we can possibly spend, so this will remain a cool little one-off moment. Then we have this maze-like area where we need to find a few generators, I guess, and destroy them in order to open a door. We are again expected to use Bugfire to break ice blocks in order to find them, and just behind that door is the path to the next boss. Before we fight it, however, we find 2 more Mega Men, Thetis and Atlas. They talk about this game of destiny where Mega Men kill each other to decide who will be the king of the world. With the exposition delivered, they leave us to deal with the level boss, Chrono Force. He is like a whale, turtle. He swims and only takes damage on the underside. Again, it feels like it was designed exclusively for Bugfire. Not only is the top projectile he shoots perfect for hitting Crony's belly, Bucky is just the perfect height to damage him by dashing under him and slicing him with his horns. The boss can make himself faster for a bit with his special attack where he pretends to be a clock, but his attacks are all pretty simple to dodge. As a new transformation for Model A, Chrono Force is both the most useless and most important form in the game. He can't even move on land, and for the few underwater sections we'll go through later in the game, there's a better option. His charge attack, however, is extremely powerful. He'll severely slow down everything else in the game. Basically, we change the Chrono Force, unload his attack, and change back into a more useful form. In normal play, there's hardly anything that requires this to beat, and the move is mostly used for solving environmental puzzles, but we'll talk about how important this is later. Now that we can transform into Buckfire, Rollspark and Chronoforce, we can keep going past the final room of either of the previous two stages and reach a locked door that requires all three types of elemental damage to open. Buckfire's fire, Rollspark's a spark, and Chronoforce is a force? Okay, that didn't work out, it's ice. Past that is our next stage, the oil field. This one is full of little nooks and crannies hiding recovery items. It feels quite complex the first time around. Again, the level design is a huge improvement over ZX. We can reach quite a few high places with Buckfire, but there are still a few parts of the level that are blocked off by cracked tubes we can't get past as we are. Enemies come at us quickly and from all directions, but it doesn't really feel overwhelming. I find it to be well paced. This level feels like it's trying really hard to justify the gay flower being in the game and failing. We're forced to use it across this gap, but I wouldn't call this as much of a justification. Rather, it feels more like a desperate plea to please use this piece of shit form. Seriously, who the fuck likes Rollspark? When you put an obstacle in front of the player that forces them to use a game mechanic just for the sake of traversing it with no alternatives and no other reasons to engage with that mechanic, you might as well have given the player a key and called it a day. And this is a problem with ZXA. We'll come back to this topic when we have more boss transformations available, but for now I'll just say I think I have a pretty good idea why Buckfire was the first transformation we got. The second use for Rollspark in this level is a little more interesting. This one is optional and that by itself makes it a lot better. The mini boss this time around is a reskin of the snake boss from the intro stage of Mega Man ZX. It has a totally different moveset, so it's not as lazy as you would expect. The thing is, the way it stands with its head up high is perfect for Rollspark to just sit under it and spam his little spike attack that goes straight up. This is a fairly annoying mini boss to fight with just Model A, so credit where credit is due. This very seemingly useless attack from this very bad form can be used creatively, and it's really cool that the game allows for this type of interaction. Eventually we reach the crashed ship that contains the parts we're looking for. After restoring energy to it with Rollspark again, see what I said about this level pushing this form really hard? Well, after restoring it and saving some raiders from getting destroyed by robots, we find Atlas, the Model F user we encountered before we fought Chronoforce. She's trying to hunt down the surviving raiders. She spouts the usual anime villain babble about standing in the way of progress or whatever, and we fight her. Her moveset is based on Model F's from the last game, so it's pretty cool that we get to be on the receiving end of that, even if she is pretty easy. There are tubes here that invite us to use Rollspark, who has an elemental advantage over her, but really, why would you? Just shoot her with the lock-on blast followed by a charge shot a few times, and don't stay directly in front of her, or in the clearly telegraphed path of her projectiles. She escapes after the fight and our protagonists see a vision of Model W, the evil biometal that Aeolus and Psyarnic were trying to steal at the Tower of Verdure. And then we get our second Mega Man form, Model F. It plays similarly to how it did in ZX. For Grave, the moveset is pretty much the same. A level 1 charge is a punch with low range but that can launch objects directly in front of us, and a level 2 charge will send out a wall of flames. For Ash, the fully charged shot is a bomb that flies straight ahead instead. Both characters have the ability to customize the trajectory of basic projectiles as well as to shoot straight up. It's a decent form that can deal good damage with just its regular attacks, and that is quite versatile when it comes to actually reaching enemies from afar. I don't really like using it for traversal, however, mostly because shooting while in this form stops us dead in our tracks. Even jumping and shooting will usually result in a few wasted frames as we land, because of just how huge the ending lag is. What matters to us right now is the fact that Model F allows us to break certain blocks and walls. We can use that ability to free the raiders in the next room. They send the parts we need back to Hunter Camp, and that's the end of the mission, but before we move on, we can go back to the oil field, break a cracked wall, and get ourselves a BM upgrade. BM is represented by the green bar next to our health, and it dictates how many special attacks we can use. In Mega Man ZX, the only way to recover this was through enemy drops or recovery items hidden around in the game world. Here we recover BM over time automatically. The BM bar could be upgraded with energy crystals in the previous game, or by defeating bosses while not hitting their weak spots. That was a somewhat interesting, though poorly executed idea that added some extra challenge to boss fights. In ZXA bosses now feature a challenge system that awards medals for completing fights with certain limitations instead. We'll talk more about that later. BM upgrades are now tied exclusively to exploration, and the BM bar is no longer locked to any particular form, and is instead shared. I felt like ZX could have used more meaningful rewards for exploration, so overall I'm glad that these are a thing now. We can now go back to the train station and go to Legion HQ. The place is under attack by Mavericks, crazed robots. The first part of the area is very uninteresting. It's basically two staircases we have to climb while biker robots spit in our direction. And then, surprisingly, not even past the first sub area, we get to the boss fight. Oh look, it's Psionic, the autist who talks like a robot even though half the people in this world are robots and can speak just fine. Like with Atlas, this is basically fighting a biometal form from ZX. His is Model P. He throws kunai and can teleport around. Eventually he'll do the shadow clone thing because he's a ninja and we're supposed to try to hit the real one. In Gray's route he can throw a shuriken, and in Ash's he'll send out some purple shit that spirals around whatever that is supposed to be. Ash's fight is slightly more difficult because of that. As we absorb Psionic's power, we get another vision of Model W that explains whoever is compatible with it will usher in the next step in evolution, which obviously means killing everybody as it usually does in these sorts of cliche anime stories. And that the one behind this whole thing is in fact a member of the Sage Trinity. Big shocker. The game pretends like it's a mystery which of them it is, but Master Albert's silhouette is right there on the screen. If you watched my video on ZX, you might recall me shitting all over Model P. It's still not very good. Really, it's actually kind of worse. Gray gets the shuriken as a charge ability, Ash gets a shield. Neither is very good. Even if the model itself is still bad, ZXA at least features more situations where it's useful. Namely dark areas where Model P can see further than other forms, and hidden paths that can only be seen on the bottom screen while the form is active. Its ability to hang on to platforms is also used a lot more here than it was previously, so Model P actually gets to do something this time around. Just not a lot of combat because it still sucks really bad at that. The second half of the stage is more interesting than the first. We're back to a large multi-layered area. The gimmick here is jumping on these jet boards to navigate between a series of large buildings. These have multiple floors and entrances. Another sub-tank can also be found here. Once we get to the actual Legion building, we'll take an elevator and wow, surprise, Master Albert was evil the whole time. He wants to destroy the world because, I don't know, he's an asshole I guess. Our protagonists scream and attack him head on because they're shonen anime protagonists, and Albert flees after telling them they'll meet again because they were made in his image. The scene plays out basically the same for both characters. Master Thomas tells us there's no data on either of them in their database, so we still don't know shit about their origins, other than that they're both related to Albert somehow. Albert is blowing shit up all over the world and now we have to go clean up his mess. We get access to 4 missions at this point. We'll start with the floating ruins. Just as we get to the area, a cutscene plays and everything around us goes up in the air. Apparently there's some gravitational anomaly going on, who cares. The gimmick here is the wind. It'll blow every once in a while and affect our momentum. It can get pretty annoying, especially with the abundance of bottomless pits here. There are also tornadoes that launch us upwards and plenty of platforms that we can ride to reach places that we can't simply jump to. The music here is great, my favorite stage track in the game. Anyway, the boss is yet another Mega Man, Aeolus, the Model Age user. He's pretty cool and edgy. Talks about how much he hates dumb people. Feels a bit like some Redditor atheist if I'm honest, but not being morbidly obese or wearing hats helps his case. Although he does have a katana. Okay, now that I think about it, he really is a Redditor from 2014. Yeah, I'm going with that. The fight itself is a bit of a letdown. You'd expect the most overpowered biometal from ZX would make for an intense fight, but most of his attacks are easily dealt with by dashing under them. His special attack is just these spinning electric things from the power plant area of ZX, and we can keep shooting away at him with Model A's lock-on mechanic as he performs it. Aeolus takes the Model W piece that was causing the gravitational anomaly and leaves. We got another vision. Oh hey, look, it's Ale. And Vince, I guess. I guess they're both canon after all. This one talks about how Albert infused everyone with his DNA to ensure biometal compatibility. Gross. And so we get Model Age, finally, and it's a complete downgrade from ZX. I mean, it's justified. Model Age was ridiculous in that game. The charge attack is still a tornado, but instead of the multi-hit beast that it was in ZX, now we get either two projectiles that go in a fan pattern in front of Gray or that go horizontally in both directions for Ash. They're not nearly as strong, but the biggest thing, and this goes for every Mega Man form in the game, is that the overdrive system is gone. As a refresher, in Mega Man ZX, all Biometal forms except for X and ZX itself could activate overdrive. In this form, the BM bar would slowly deplete, but all attacks were infused with Biometal's elements and dealt double damage. This could be used to get rid of bosses in a matter of seconds, especially when combined with the combo system, which we still haven't gotten into either. Basically, every attack in the game has a priority value. Attacks with higher priority ignore boss iframes from lower priority attacks. This system is still here, but Model A, our base model, doesn't have too many options to make use of it. I mentioned using a lock-on shot followed by a charge shot when we were fighting Atlas. That's Model A's basic combo. It just doesn't have a very complex moveset. In contrast, Model ZX could follow up a charge shot with a jump attack with a walking slash with a full 3-hit combo. It could be argued that the player was too overpowered in ZX, but to me that game just had a much higher skill ceiling. As a kid I had no idea about any of that shit. I'd fight most bosses by just spamming charge shots and trying to dodge their attacks. Now that I've beaten that game dozens of times, I can make short work of pretty much anything, and I think that's pretty cool. The combat system in ZXA is simply not as complex as in ZX, and that is one reason why I prefer the first game. Another is that Model ZX is just so much more fun to control than Model A, and we're stuck with it for so much of the game. All that being said, even in this heavily nerfed form, Model Age is probably the best model we have access to so far. Nothing comes close to it in terms of mobility. With it, we can air dash horizontally and vertically, which allows us to reach places no other form can. It is also the first form we get that uses sabers. These are very strong, great for dispatching regular enemies, and can also be used to cut down energy drops to get different types of refills, which is extremely useful. Model Age is still great and the reason why we came here first. Now let's move on. Next is the highway. Here are some of the most fucking annoying enemies in the game. If we just walk past them, they'll do nothing. But if we dash anywhere near them, they'll spaz out and won't leave us alone until they're dead. And since we want to spam dash everywhere, that's pretty much all the time. Now why the fuck would you introduce an enemy that simply makes it so that you have to play the game in a more boring manner? They offer zero challenge if we just go slow. It's not like it makes for any interesting scenarios. This is honestly trash enemy design and it kinda pisses me off a little if I'm honest. With that rant out of the way, I do find this to be a very memorable and interesting level. It takes place during a Maverick raid and features two mini bosses, and it's the only stage in the game to do this. The first one is a reskin of the airship boss from the second stage of Mega Man ZX. That boss was complete shit, and while this one is not really anything to write home about, it's still an improvement. It's dealt with very quickly by using Model F and shooting upwards, but what's interesting about it is the fact that we fight it while trying to protect civilians that are escaping by car. I don't even think letting them die actually does anything, but it does help the game world feel a lot more believable. There's a puzzle here involving Chrono Force's time stop that nets us another BM upgrade. The next mini boss is a bunch of Beyblades spinning around a box with an eye. What's fun about it is the fact that we can punch the Beyblades with Model F and make them fly right into the central box thing. The boss will slowly close in on us, and the space we have to work with is somewhat limited. It also forces the screen to scroll, so if we're caught behind one of these pillars and the screen catches up, we're fucked. It actually feels kind of oppressive, and just past it is the actual boss of this stage. Theta's the Model L Twink. He's a dumb eco-terrorist who drank too much of the Grata Kool-Aid and probably works for some gay NGO that doesn't really do anything. He's pissed off about trash being thrown into the ocean, and like a good eco-terrorist, he thinks he can fix that by being a nuisance. He takes his performative protest a little too far, however, and decides the best course of action is to genocide all of humanity to save the fucking turtles from eating plastic straws. Anyway, he's probably the hardest Mega Man boss. The whole fight takes place underwater over a bottomless pit, and all we have to stand on are these broken pillars. He'll dash at us from off-screen, perform an attack, and dash away again. We can usually sneak in a lock-on into a charge shot combo as he does. For his desperation move after he drops below half health, he'll summon some sea anemone thing that'll shoot out a few snowflakes that'll freeze us on contact and suck everything towards it. It can be easily dodged by simply sticking to the side of the pillar away from it. As he's defeated, he also escapes with the Model W piece and we get yet another vision. This one tells us about the origins of Prometheus and Pandora and how they were created by Albert for the purpose of making Mega Men fight each other. I like Model L. The form is pretty simple, it only has one basic attack, which is a quick swing of its halberd, but it's strong, easily spammable, and has good range for a melee attack. It also has the best underwater mobility in the game. Gray can summon an ice dragon that homes in on enemies with its charge attack. Ash makes an ice ball that can be struck again with a halberd to make spikes fly in multiple directions. I rarely use either of them, just jumping around with a halberd is usually good enough. We still have 2 stages left before we can advance the story, so let's keep going. The Scrapyard is a fairly complex level that can be quite confusing. It's been clearly built for Model P, and I kind of like having an excuse to use it for once. I still maintain that it is by far the worst biometal transformation, but I won't deny that it's pretty cool in concept. The stage is very labyrinthian, with multiple doors that can send us back to previous areas, and we can use Model P's bottom screen ability to identify those. He's also used for his ability to hold onto ledges multiple times. There's a life up here that requires Chrono Force's time freeze ability again. I appreciate the complexity out of principle, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't find navigating it to be kind of a slog. This puzzle in the end with levers that move these huge blocks can be fairly aggravating, because failing to activate one lever at the end will pretty much force us to redo the whole thing from the start. The boss here is Voltron. He's LARPing as a rock star and uses a guitar to attack. He can deactivate our ability to attack with sound waves if we're standing next to the speakers as he plays. He'll also summon scrap zombies that have to be killed twice before they disappear. It's an okay fight. As a transformation, he's a strong contender for the one I use the least. He can hold on to walls and is used to go through these very specific obstacles by holding onto one of the sides of a pulley system. He's effectively this game's equivalent of a can opener. You use it every once in a while to open something, throw it aside and forget about it. After the fight, we meet Pandora again as she is taking another Model W piece. She says a whole lot of cryptic shit and goes away. Next is the control center. This level is not terribly interesting. Everything is burning and shit, but it comes down to 3 corridors and 2 shafts. The good news is, this level feels like it was made for Model H, and Model H is always fun to use. Before this elevator section, we can use Roll Spark to reach an opening on the ceiling and climb the shaft instead of using the elevator. It's pretty fun actually, and we get another life up for our effort. The mini-boss is a wall with 5 light bulbs sticking out of it, not the most inspired. It's best dealt with by using Model A's lock-on. Then we go through shaft number 2 and corridor number 3 and get to the level boss, but not before meeting up with our good buddy Prometheus. To everyone's surprise, he says a bunch of edgy shit that's not actually important and goes away, taking a piece of Model W with him. Man, Prometheus is the coolest, I want to be just like him. Then the real boss shows up, Queen Bee. Somewhat creative fight really. Model H absolutely destroys her, but what's interesting is that she'll only take direct damage if we hit her tiny body that's really high up. More likely we'll hit the hive that she's carrying. It'll explode after a while, damaging her and allowing us to score a few extra hits before she'll go get another one off screen. Again, Model H kicks her ass. As a transformation, she sucks at fighting, but actually gets quite a bit of use in puzzle solving. She can attach to certain objects and move them, and more importantly, she can fly. While it's more like she gets extra jumps at the cost of BM energy, so it's not unlimited, but it still comes in handy in a few situations. And now we can finally progress the main story. As we turn in the final mission, Master Thomas contacts us and asks us to retrieve a piece of Mother W found near the hunter camp. To the left of the main area of the camp, there is a room with a hole we can open with Queen Bee. In this area we have to use all of our new forms to progress into the quarry. As we enter it, we find a destroyed giant spider like the one from Roll Spark's stage. The next sub area is really dark, so Model P gets to do something again. We go down a few ladders, up a few ledges, and eventually we reach a boss door. And inside is Ale! And she's all grown up. And the Model W fragment is also here. Talking like civilized people and explaining the situation is hard, so we fight, but not before we get a full transformation sequence for Ale. Nice. In Ash's story, we find Vent instead. I don't want to get into the merit of which side is canon because there's no definitive answer. Yeah, it's pretty annoying. I just pretend like they're all canon and don't think too much about it. The fight is disappointingly easy, unfortunately. I used Model A here and the same basic combo I've used for pretty much everything else so far. All of their attacks are easy to dodge if we keep our distance, which is very easy as Model A. Vent gets an upward slash that makes it easier for him to catch us as we try to jump over him, so I'd say he's slightly harder than AO. Once we beat him, we finally get to play as Model ZX, and it's by far the best biometal form in the game. The removal of Overdrive takes away the advantage other models had over it in the previous game, so ZX is left with the most powerful and versatile moveset. We get both a sword for close quarters combat and a powerful blaster. I love Model ZX. Running around spamming the dash button and effortlessly getting rid of enemies without slowing down is so much fun. This is when the game really gets good for me. God, I wish we had this form from the start, or at least that Model A was more interesting to play as. You know the drill at this point. New Mega Man form, new exposition cutscene. This time the ZX siblings resonate with our protagonists and see the vision as well. This one is about how Albert wants to use Model W to become the ultimate Mega Man, which I think anyone would have figured out at this point. The Model W fragment falls further into the cave, and our heroes set out to find it again. I want AO to call me a good kid too. The main attraction of the second part of the level is this chase sequence that manages to recycle both a sprite from Mega Man ZX and a concept from Mega Man X. I don't care much for it honestly. There's a BM upgrade here we can get after the excavator robot blows up. Then, a little further ahead, we find the Model W piece, and it revives another giant spider. We have to fight it, but Model ZX makes short work of it. The spinny swirly air slash thing is really powerful. Our designated ZX sibling jumps out from off screen and finishes it off. Finally they have a talk and realize they're on the same side. We're given a new card key and told to go explore new areas. At this point we have 3 more stages to beat before we can progress. Let's get to it. A green door close to the entrances to Verdure Tower and Arctic Ice Floe leads to the Waterfall Ruins. What's interesting about this level is that the boss fight is right at the start. These are Argoyle and Ugoyle. They share a boss health bar, but actually only have half of that total independently. And depleting one's health will take him out for the rest of the fight. They coordinate their attacks, and so we have to pay extra attention to dodge both of them. But this also means that we often get the opportunity to strike both of them at once. They'll dash and jump around and kick a spike ball between themselves. It's a good enough fight. And hey, you can even use Roll Spark here. I wonder if anyone has ever done it. Argoyle's transformation can summon Ugoyle as his charge attack. He can then throw spike balls that Ugoyle can kick again for extra damage. Ugoyle can also go through walls, and that'll be used for collecting shit mostly. They're kind of fun but not all that useful. The final life up is here, up a waterfall. We can use Model L to reach it. The level splits into 2 paths halfway through. They both feature annoying insta-kill spike challenges, but the left route is a lot more aggravating. Then at the end there's a mini boss to make up for the fact that the real boss was right at the beginning. It's kind of awkward. It's some jelly monster inside a totem pole looking thing, and it can be hit when the mouth opens. Alternatively, with Ash's Model A charge shot that bounces around, or Queen Bee that flies up and shoots projectiles out of her asshole, we can damage it from a top opening as well, and that one is always available. Honestly, it's easier to just use Model ZX like with everything else at this point. There was supposed to be a supercomputer here in this area though, as used to hack Legion's databases and delete information about Grey and Ash, and when we get to it, we find Prometheus and Pandora and they had just destroyed it. Blah blah game of destiny, blah blah edge. Apparently they're not big fans of Albert either. At least we can gather that much from this conversation. Next we're going back to Gray's tutorial area. We can access it again via a transporter close to the entrance to the waterfall. It's not really a great level, quite short. We eventually find Prometheus and Pandora's empty Dragon Ball healing pods. It is revealed that they were created in a way that forces them to return to these pods periodically or they'll die. And that's how Albert controls them. The second sub-area of the level features a few puzzles where we have to push energy cells into place in order to open doors. One of these leads to a sub-tank we can get using Ugoyle, and boss time. What the fuck, man? You make it too fucking easy. So, Hedgeshock, the electric hedgehog Pokemon, can spin dash, shoot electricity, and summon rats to attack us. Model ZX, you know how it goes. As a transformation, it can go into places we would normally have to crawl through in human form. That's basically it. After the boss room we find one more empty capsule. Mysterious. The biolab can be accessed from another green door past some blocks that can be broken by Model F. It's a fairly complex and multi-layered level with lots of new enemies and gimmicks. The final BM upgrade can be found here by completing a water level puzzle. I don't have much to say, to be honest, it's a fine level. Bifrost is probably the coolest looking boss in the game. He's absolutely huge. He's a fucking T-Rex, and T-Rexes are the coolest shit no matter what. At this point you should be used to the idea that Model ZX just absolutely wrecks everything in the game, and this is no exception. For as cool as he is unfortunately another can opener transformation. We can destroy these blocks by biting them, but he's way too slow to ever be useful in combat or traversal. It's a shame, but really I don't see any way they could have made this work. And with Bifrost we now have access to every pseudoroid form in the game. Pseudoroids are the bosses that look like animals, by the way, and overall my opinion on them being in the game is mixed. Out of all 8 of them, only one is even remotely playable outside of very niche situations, and it is the very first one, Buckfire. He's fast, his jump is pretty good, his attacks are strong, and his projectiles have a good trajectory. The only reason why we couldn't theoretically go through most levels without changing him out is the fact that he can't wall climb, only jump between 2 walls. I alluded to this before, but the biggest problem with these forms is the fact that they are often little more than glorified keys. I'm not arguing every form should be able to go through the entire game by itself, but it should have more tactical use ideally. Buckfire gets to shine in the early game and has the most comprehensive moveset, and Chronoforce has his time-slowing charge attack, but if you use him it'll be only for that, and you'll transform again likely into a Mega Man form right away. Roll Spark is used in traversal when absolutely required. Green Bee is used in a few environmental puzzles but is basically useless in combat, outside of very niche situations. Sonichu and Argyle are severely limited in their usefulness because they can't wall jump in any way, and Voltron and Bifrost are can openers. The Mega Man forms are simply better for both traversal and combat in basically every way, and more importantly, they're just more fun to use. And this is my biggest gripe with ZXA. It features a lot more transformations than ZX did, but none of the new ones that are useful or fun to use, and the ones that make a return are all worse. Well, except for Model ZX, and that one absolutely dominates the later half of the game. The idea of being able to play as the bosses we defeat is really cool, but I think the implementation here was not ideal. And to be fair, I think it would be really hard to implement something like this. Honestly, I think this game would have been better if the focus was instead on more Mega Man forms. Refine the ones from ZX, add a few more. The way this was done doesn't really make the game worse per se, and evidently I still really like it, but I feel like ultimately this ends up being closer to unnecessary bloat than to something that makes the game more enjoyable. Anyway, now we can use a trans server in the biolab to access the underwater volcano, which is where Albert is keeping the Model W pieces he's been collecting. The name is pretty self-explanatory for the first sub-area at least. I know it's late into the game, but I want to talk a little bit about the visuals, because I think this area looks really underwhelming. The volcanoes in the background look very flat, and with the extremely low frame rate explosion animation, the whole thing looks unfinished, frankly. It's a bit jarring because overall ZXA still looks about as good as the first game. The backgrounds are beautiful and multi-layered, and the pixel art is fantastic. The underwater volcano looking as underwhelming as it does is something that really sticks out. They might have not had enough time to polish it, but it's weird that this is the only place in the game that looks rushed. It's an underwater section. Model L makes short work of it, and it doesn't drag on for too long. When we get to Albert's hideout, the level design becomes a bit more interesting. Here we can choose between 2 paths. The one on the left is pretty easy. We go down a shaft dealing with a bunch of enemies. The one on the right is a little harder. It really wants us to use Roll Spark, and naturally I really don't want to. I use Model H instead. Just have to jump over a few spikes. At the very end there's a part that's too long for us to dash over, but fortunately we can use these bats to damage boost over it. Get fucked, Roll Spark, you're still useless. Regardless of which path we take, we end up next to the boss door. And it's finally time. We find Albert standing next to all the Model W fragments he's collected. My heroes. The Edge siblings show up and Prometheus fucking murders Albert totally for real. They admit to having conspired against him from the beginning, and their ultimate objective is to destroy everything he created as revenge, and that includes themselves. pretty fucking emo, and we've been chosen as the ones to take them out. Unfortunately, the fight here is not as good as in the previous game. The music still kicks ass. Sucks that we only get to hear it once in this game. Their moves are all new, and that's good, but they just go down way too fast here. In the double fight from ZX, Prometheus and Pandora would weave in and out of the screen, covering each other as they did. Their hitboxes were never on screen for too long, but the fight was still dynamic. There was always something going on, and you always had to be on your toes, ready for the next attack. Here they just sit in the middle of the screen while they slowly perform their attacks, and we can just wail at them with Model ZX. After the fight, P and P get absorbed mid-speech by the Model W fragments, and the familiar glowy transformation thingies come out of them. Oh boy, this is it. Finally, the best characters in the sub-series. We'll finally get to play as them.
Piece of fucking motherfucking piece of shit.
Albert shows up and absorbs them. Motherfucker. Really? Did you really have to tease me like this? God fucking damn it, I just wanted to play as Prometheus. Model A even goes, "Could this be?" before Albert ruins everything. They knew what they were doing. I was pissed at this even as a kid. I'll give him credit, I fucking hate Albert now. I want to turn his face into mush. Motherfucker. Okay, I'm calm. Turns out what Prometheus killed wasn't the real Albert, just a puppet. The empty pod we found at the mysterious lab was either for this puppet or for his real body. I'm pretty sure. Maybe some Mega Man lore wizard autist can confirm that in the comments. All of the Model W fragments combine into a ring and fly into the sky, forming the very Japanesely named Ouroboros. Van Toreo show up and offer to lend the Guardian airship from the first game as a way to board it. This is it. This is the final stage in the game. But before we go there, let's do some cleaning up, shall we? We have all life ups and BM ups now, but we're still missing a sub tank. We can get it at the floating ruins once we have Bifrost. There's a girl in a cave who wants us to look around for a bunch of artifacts and bring them back to her. There's one for each sub area. They can be fairly annoying to get because of the wind, but I do this over getting the area K or L sub tanks in ZX any day of the week. God, those were terrible. I don't even want to think about them. Then there are B chips that we get as rewards from various side quests that give us small advantages, such as being able to block enemy projectiles with sword slashes. I mentioned the boss medal system that replaces the level system from ZX. In that game we were ranked based on how many times we hit a boss's weak spot. The highest rank was awarded if we could beat it without hitting it once. For some bosses that was really easy, and for others it was infuriating. The medal system instead offers very specific challenges that differ from boss to boss. There are 3 medals for each boss, gold, silver and bronze. They usually involve dealing the final blow with a specific attack, or only using a specific form during the fight. We can refight bosses by talking to the hunters that are waiting on the rooftops in Hunter Camp. The problem is that these are usually more boring than difficult. I'll give you a few examples. Bugfire's gold medal challenge asks us to only deal damage using Model P's seeking kunai ability. Tapping an enemy on the bottom screen will cause Model P to throw a single kunai in its direction. The damage is minimal, and I won't even go into how awkward it is to do in the Legacy Collection release of the game, where we don't actually have a touchscreen and have to instead aim with the analog stick. It takes forever. All of Argoyle and Ugoyle's medals involve killing them both at the same time. This is very hard to do because even if you only attack one each time and always use the same attacks, they have different weak spots, and hitting those will deal more damage. I only managed to do this after I remembered Model Age's bottom screen ability shows individual enemy health bars. I think the idea of the medal system is solid, but I don't like the actual challenges that they went with. Regardless, getting all of them unlocks Model A, that is lowercase a, for all future playthroughs. Yeah, I think it's retarded that it doesn't actually unlock it for the save file in which you get all the medals, but whatever. What it is a form of the Model A transformation made to look like 8-bit Mega Man. It's pretty much useless. It can go through crawl spaces with the slide, which is faster than crawling I guess, but it's more of a fun little secret than anything you would actually want to use. Well, that's it. The final level starts when we talk to Van Oreo in the Hunter Camp. If you played any Mega Man games, you should know what awaits us, a gauntlet of bosses we fought previously. In ZX, the final stage was basically just 2 elevators and the 8 pseudoroid refights. Here there's an actual stage. It starts out fairly simple with spike bits and blocks we can destroy with Bifrost to reach recovery items and such. It has quite a few hiding spots for those for how short the first section is. Albert shows up and reveals he also has Model A's ability to transform. He says he'll reveal everything if we can make it to him. To advance past the next room we have to defeat Buckfire, Chrono Force, Roll Spark, and Voltron again. And then immediately after that, Queen Bee, Bifrost, Sonichu, and Argoyle. The second half of the level is actually really cool. The main gimmick comes in the form of these weird gelatinous blocks that we can clear with our weapons, but that'll come back after a while. Getting caught inside one means death. Getting rid of one that's your only footing over spikes or bottomless pits also means death, naturally. This section requires a good understanding of our movesets as well as good planning in order to get through, especially when spike blocks start appearing. Touching these is an instant kill. Very cool and well designed section. As we go through the boss door, we're ambushed by all the Mega Men we fought previously. Our ZX sibling shows up to distract them as we go confront Albert. There's a huge field of flowers on top of Ouroboros for some reason, or maybe it's flying over a bunch of cherry blossom trees. I can't really tell how low res the background is. Well, it looks striking anyway, I guess that's what matters. Albert's big revelation is that he created Grey in his image as a son and is a direct ancestor of Ash. Yeah, Albert canonically had sex. Also, the A in Model A stands for Albert. He turns into a giant dragon for no apparent reason when we have to fight it, but this is not treated as a boss fight for some reason, more like a mini boss. There's no health bar and he gets no invincibility frames. Albert decides he's not yet enough of an anime villain cliche and says the thing. Then it turns into Samus. This is the actual final boss. It's a lot easier than Serpent, that's for sure. We have to destroy these floating thingies around him in order to disable his shield. This is best done with Model A. Then he'll fall down and I bet you can guess what our next move should be. The fight never really evolves past this, and his attacks aren't even all that hard to dodge. Our heroes reaffirm who they are as Albert explodes, then they pass out. Apparently, the other Mega Men were having a staring contest while we fought Albert. No one seems to have moved even an inch. Model Z detaches from Vantoreo and says he'll hold them back, so they should go rescue Ash or Grey. Wait, could it do this? I thought Model Z was serving as life support for Model X after it was almost destroyed by Serpent in the first game. Also, it apparently can shut down other biometals. I don't know, seems like a bit of an ass-pull. Ouroboros falls apart and our heroes wake up back at the Hunter camp. Ayo! Anyway, blah blah, you can decide your own destiny credits. But we're still not done. Mega Man ZX Admin has an expert mode, and boy is it hard, for about a level. I mean, it is pretty hard. Enemies are faster, deal a lot more damage, have more complex patterns, and we don't have access to any life up or beam ups and only one sub tank that we can only get near the end of the game. But the difficulty curve is very weird. Basically, this is the reason why Chrono Force is so important. Beating him is really difficult in expert mode, but after that we can abuse his time freeze attack to make things more manageable, and beating the game in this mode unlocks a secret ending. And it's a fucking cliffhanger. Basically, Master Thomas does exactly the same thing Albert did, and dramatically reveals he was actually evil the whole time. And well, this game is pushing 20 at this point, and the third game never came out. Mega Man ZX Advent was made at a time where games like this could exist thanks to a delicate balance of corporate interests, production costs, and hardware available. And it just so happened that when the time came for its sequel to be produced, that balance simply did not exist anymore. Mega Man ZX Advent is a great game. Mega Man ZX was a great game, but it had many flaws, and Advent actually did something a concerningly small number of sequels do. It addressed those flaws, while building a game that expands on the original's strengths in many ways, while also bringing new ideas to the table. It's by all means a great sequel. Admittedly, I personally still prefer the original. I see it as a more cohesive package, with less bloat and a deeper comment system, but I can see many ways in which ZXA is a better game. The level design specifically is a straight improvement. The terrible map and mission systems were overhauled and made much more intuitive. ZXA is absolutely a much easier game to recommend than its predecessor. The series at this point really felt like it was closing in on something really special, and it never came to be. The miracle that made Mega Man 2 possible 20 years prior did not come to be again. The sad reality is that miracles don't always happen. That's why they're called miracles. And for every Mega Man 2 that somehow made it, there are dozens of Mega Man ZX3s that simply never saw the light of day. But miracles are not about reality, they're about faith. If I were a betting man, I wouldn't put my money on the ZX saga ever getting finished. But I'm not a betting man, so maybe I could allow myself to have a little faith for once. Who knows what the future holds? I've seen crazier things happen, and hey, forever is a long time. Hey, thanks for watching. We're closing in on 1,000 subs, can you believe that? Remember to make the number go up, click the buttons and shit. And yeah, that's it. See you next time.